Let's talk about the Roscommon senior footballers, shall we? I mean, a disappointing year for Roscommon in 2021. Beaten in every game in the National Football League, beaten in the Championship by Galway as well. It was always going to be tough for them, to be fair, in that division, in the National Football League in Division 1, when you're paired up with Dublin, Galway and Kerry. You know, it's always going to be a struggle and always going to be very difficult for a team like Roscommon to avoid relegation in that scenario. But yeah, 5 defeats in total for Roscommon in 2021. A disappointing year. They haven't won a game, as a matter of fact, since just after the lockdown in 2020. And the return of football just after the lockdown, they won 2 games in Division 2 against both Armagh, Cavan to seal promotion. And that's where they'll be once again in 2022. They'll be back in Division 2, in a very difficult Division 2, alongside the likes of Galway, Meath, Derry, Cork, Clare, Offaly, Down. I mean, so many great teams in there. It's going to be very tough to see how Roscommon get on there. I was delighted to speak with Darragh O'Connor from the Sideline View Podcast for today's season preview. There will be more season previews coming out later in the week as well. We'll have the We Are Meath podcast on as we discuss Meath, another Division 2 team in there, of course, as well. We'll also be discussing the Laois hurlers and Laois footballers later in the week as well. So if you enjoy this content, enjoy all the season previews, all the rest, leave a like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get straight into it.
Well, nowadays you got to have that because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. Okay, so I'm joined here now by Darragh O'Connor from the Sideline View Podcast here to preview the Roscommon senior footballers ahead of the upcoming 2022 Intercounty GAA season. I suppose I was chatting to you off air there, Darragh. You're keeping well anyways, and I suppose you're somewhat set for Christmas anyway, albeit with all the restrictions and madness going on.
Yeah, it's a bit deja vu coming up to Christmas again after last year. Everyone thought last Christmas that this Christmas should be a bit, well, a normal one, if you like, anyways. And it's fairly similar. It's a bit depressing again. You just have to hope maybe compared to last year when we were in lockdown till the end of March or so, it went on for 3 months. You have to hope that maybe by the end of January, hopefully, or something like that, and we can kind of proceed with GAA with crowds and at the games as normal and have a proper year for the first time since 2019, I think, was the last sort of full proper year, which is incredible to think going into 2022. So you just have to hope that we'll have a fair crack at it this next year.
Yeah, it's mad actually when you put it that way as well. The fact that the last time we had a full normal GAA season was 2019. It's kind of crazy when you know really does kind of put a lot of things into perspective. Have you been enjoying much of the club action or following much of the club action or anything over the past couple of weeks? I know Padraig Pearce is there, got into a Connacht Club Senior Football Championship final, I suppose, in somewhat controversial circumstances. But have you been following much of the club action or anything?
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on here and there. Obviously, there was Roscommon Club Championship. I kept a close eye on, and I didn't actually see the game live, the one against Mount Bellew and Moylock, but I saw the highlights, and yeah, probably controversial to say the least. But it's a great win for Pearces to get into a Connacht Club final. That's a really great achievement for them. Against a fancied Mount Bellew team, I'm pretty sure. So it'll be an interesting final against Knockmore. Knockmore sort of struggled a bit over against the Sligo champions Tour de France. So look, I mean, Pearces, you'll have to. It's a final. I'm pretty sure Knockmore will probably be favourites going into it, but look, it's a great opportunity, and then you win that, and you're suddenly a game away from Croke Park in an All Ireland final. So I mean, you just have to grasp these opportunities. They were in it obviously a few years ago against Currafin and put a decent challenge up to Currafin for long periods of that game. So the thing about Pearces is they're a dogged team. They're a hard team to win again. You know, with the likes of the Dailies there. It's 4 Dailies with the 3 from the Roscommon team and Lorcan as well. Davy Murray, Hubert Darcy. You know, they have 6 or 7 county players there, and they're a real tough nut to crack. We've seen that in the county final against Connacht as well. So they'll fancy their chances, and it'd be great to see a Roscommon team win the Connacht Club. I think Bridges. I'm pretty sure we're definitely the last team to do that. So it'd be great for the county if they could.
Yeah, I suppose Pierce's are probably gone under the radar a little bit as well. Like, I feel like a lot of people are looking at the usual big hitters, and maybe Knockmore might be the favourites, but I don't know. Like, Knockmore are probably a team with a lot of inexperience in there, and like what you said in there with Pierce's with the Dailies and whatnot, like they're probably the team with the experience and the history of having played in the Connacht final 2 years previous. So I suppose they're the team with maybe a little bit more experience.
Yeah, no, they'll definitely use that. And it is, look, county players are important to a certain extent, but definitely, I suppose, the experience of I said, the likes of the Dailies, Davy Murray, they've played Connacht senior county finals, and they've had that experience against Currafin. And even that Mount Bellew game will stand to them to get through a battle like that, a close battle, obviously, again, in controversial circumstances, but they did their job. So yeah, I think they'll definitely fancy their chances. I mean, they've only won 2 county senior titles. I mean, the first one was it 2018, 2019? I can't even remember the years with all the COVID stuff, but which was incredible to think, actually. They're big club Pierces, so they've actually only won 2 senior county titles. So, I mean, if they could win a Connacht club on top of that, it'd be a huge achievement for the club.
Yeah, and I suppose we're not too far away now from the inter-county return as well, like only 5 or 6 weeks away. I know it sounds a bit crazy with the fact we still have Christmas to get through and all the rest, and maybe there might be stoppages and we don't really know what's going to happen. But I was seeing there, like, even some pre-season tournaments scheduled for, I think, the 5th and 6th of January or that weekend. So, I mean, I'd imagine you're excited enough to see the inter-county return and I suppose get back into all that action as well.
Yeah, it should be kind of the proper lead in with the well, I know the Connacht FBD is going ahead. I think Roscommon I think it's Sligo. It could be Leitrim. It's Leitrim or Sligo, I think. And then they're playing them games in the Connacht GAA, the Air Dome. I don't know if you've seen that for the first time as well. That, yeah. Well, so that'll be even. Look, the FBD is never the most exciting thing. It's about getting fitness and testing out players. But even that sort of element to even see that in full use, an indoor arena for a GAA game will be interesting. So just looking forward to seeing the team back in action. It's been long enough. I think it was June when we got knocked out. So you're talking 6 or 7 months, and it was the limp way we went out as well. So hopefully, new year and a better one for Roscommon.
That Air Dome, that's Mayo's Air Dome, isn't it? That's their.
It's the Connacht. Well, it's in Mayo. It's Connacht GAAs. Yeah, Mayo. Yeah, so we won't give Mayo that one, but it is in Mayo. Yeah. It's Connacht GAA property.
Yeah, I'm sure Mayo will try and claim it anyways, or something anyways. Like, yeah. But I suppose, how would you reflect anyways on 2021 League and Championship for Roscommon? Like, I suppose not the best in the end, not wins. I don't think in order of League or Championship from what I can remember. Obviously, there was no qualifiers in there. So if there had been qualifiers, maybe you might have got 1 or 2 wins or gone on a bit of a run. But I suppose it was always going to be tough as well, especially when you look at the division you were in, like Kerry, Dublin, Galway in there as well. Like, I suppose it was always going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it 2 ways. I mean, the teams we were playing against were the real top end of the the country. It wasn't like we were losing to bottom end Division 2 or 3 teams. So you can say that. I think it was probably the performances were just really disappointing in the year. Games that stand out. I mean, the two Galway games. I mean, the Armagh game was a really poor one. You can lose to Dublin and Kerry. You'll get a sort of a pass on that. But I think it was the Galway and Armagh games. We kind of see ourselves in and around that level. We're not in the top 4 or 5, but we see probably Galway, Armagh teams we can beat, and it was just kind of the performances that were limp, and just the way we went about it. It was kind of defensive, slow play, and I think I said earlier in the year, if you play that way, you have to really win. If you end up losing, then it's just not going to go down well. And there's been a complete clean out of the backroom team now. It's just Anthony Cunningham has stayed on, and a whole new backroom team have come in. I mean, something had to change, whether it was going to be the manager or just something had to change. So it will be interesting to see how different it is. next year with a new backroom team. But you have to hope in Division 2 that will surely be competitive. Well, that's the expectation anyways, to be challenging for promotion again. Which it's a competitive Division 2 as well, with the likes of Meath, Galway, Cork, Derry, Offaly even coming up. Even Down is a tricky team. I don't know if I'm missing anyone.
Clare maybe.
Clare
Cork,
as well, yeah.
Cork
Yeah,
as
they
well,
were Cork, yeah. You know, it's a really competitive Division 2. You know, I mean, probably all of them could say be up towards that top end. But Division 2 is always like that. You could be 2 points away from promotion and you could be only a point above relegation. It's just one of those crazy divisions. So the expectation is definitely to challenge for promotion, and definitely be in the top 3, I suppose, at least be there come the last game of the league.
Yeah, I think I remember an interview with one of the Cavan players when the full-time whistle went, and they were disappointed that they didn't get promoted, and then they just found out they got relegated with the way some of the other results went. So sometimes Division 2 can kind of be a bit crazy, but like what you said there, like it is going to be fiercely competitive in Division 2. Like it's now, maybe in previous years it might have been a bit of a given, maybe not necessarily in terms of how the divisions play out, but maybe on paper you would have looked at it and saw, you know, okay, Roscommon should be good enough to get promoted here, they should be thereabouts. But looking at it this time around, like the teams that are coming up in terms of Derry and Offaly are definitely on the rise, and Galway are obviously a very good team as well. And then some of the teams even in the middle of the pack have probably improved as well. Like Cork have got a new manager in there. Meath, I'm sure, are going to want to have a big year under Andy McEntee. So, like, as much as Roscommon might be chasing promotion, it could easily go the other way as well. So it's definitely going to be a tough league campaign, I'd imagine, for the Rossies in there.
Yeah, competitive games, which you want. You know, I said listing the teams out there. There's no real easy game there when you think about it. I think, you know, Down are probably the weakest in the division, but we have them away going up to Newry. So that's, you know, again, anytime you go up to Newry, it's never easy. So you'll have to, I think whoever goes up this year, they'll really have to earn it. But look, the expectation has to be to challenge at least for promotion. I think that's the very minimum requirement. You know, you think we've been promoted or relegated every time the last 4 or 5 years. So will it finally stop and we settle in Division 2, or we go back up to Division 1? I think we're more than capable of going back up to Division 1 if we play our football. I think Galway are probably the clear favourites, I'd imagine, to go up. I think just with the players they have, and you know, I'd be surprised if Galway didn't finish in the top 2. So you probably then see Cork, Roscommon, Meath and Derry, I'd say, it's a challenge for that second. I think probably Clare, Offaly and Down are just below that. So it'll be competitive. And I think Anthony Cunningham needs a good start as well to the year. There was a lot of people probably calling him for him to go after that Galway game. So he needs a good start this year, and I don't think there's any excuses for a poor year this year being in Division 2, and especially with that Connacht Championship draw to get to a final as well. You know, that's a minimum, and it's no disrespect to Sligo or New York if they manage to pull it off an upset there. But you know, anytime you avoid Mayo or Galway until the final, you have to get to the final for Roscommon. So last year you could make a few excuses. I don't think the excuses can be there this year.
Yeah, and I suppose given the fact that we've seen the Roscommon under-20s make the final last year as well, obviously beaten by Offaly in the end, could you see any of them under-20s maybe make a couple of appearances in this Division 2 league campaign? Because it is probably a good time, although you want to be careful and you don't end up in a relegation dogfight around like that, because we've seen obviously with Tier 2 coming in, and like what you said, Roscommon should be good enough to make it a Connacht final anyways, but you don't want to risk that situation where you go down to Division 3 and then, you know, maybe for next year you're kind of stuck there with a potential Tier 2 coming along. But could you see maybe some of those under-20s maybe make it into the team, a couple of appearances here and there?
Yeah, well, from what I've heard, well, I think they'll be back training a few weeks anyways, and 50 players have been brought in to have a look at. So I think 4 or 5 under-20s have been brought in, along with a few other younger lads, maybe 21, 22. So I think he's definitely trying to freshen up a bit, because I think that's probably one thing you could throw at us, that under Anthony, the last 3 years, really it's been the same team. No one's really come into it. So it does need a bit of a freshening up. I mean, that under-20 team, there's definitely 2 or 3 fellas in that team that's more than good enough to. I think everyone's thinking, just to even bring them into the panel. You know, we're not asking for 4 or 5 of them to go straight into the starting team, but just to see, you know, so someone from that team to go into the panel, or into even one into the team, just to freshen it up, because they're more than good enough. You know, they gave a huge lift to the whole county last year. It was a real low for football after the seniors went out, and then you know, the under-20s were just brilliant getting to that final unexpectedly as well. I going to that kind of final against Mayo, I didn't really have too much expectation, but the way they bet Mayo that day, and then, you know, they bet a highly fancied down team in the semi-final, and then the final itself, just unlucky. You know, they missed, I think, 3 or 4 goal chances in the first 10 or 15 minutes. You know, you put them away, it could be a completely different story. They're just one of those teams that they create loads of goal chances, but they miss a good few as well. So, but that team definitely has enough to hopefully, maybe not next year to get into the team, but the future's definitely bright. The next 3 or 4 years it's just given a lift and a bit of positivity going into the coming years again.
Yeah, because I suppose there might have been a bit of a worry there that maybe Roscommon were on a bit of a decline. Like, obviously, you know, you look back in history, it's not like Roscommon have been like Mayo and Galway, where they've been consistently winning Connacht titles, or consistently getting to finals, or consistently playing in Division 1, you know. So I suppose maybe there was that worry that Roscommon, after being relegated last year, might be on the decline a little bit. But I suppose with the under-20s, like, it's kind of brought that positivity, I'm sure, back in, with the fact that, okay, maybe if some of the current crop do step away in the next couple of years, and maybe if things don't work out as good as planned, I know underage success doesn't always translate into senior success, but at least you do have the players there, and you have the players to turn to if maybe you do need to call upon some under-20s, whether it be in the panel, pre-season tournaments, or even coming off the bench. Like, we've seen Galway, Donegal, even Dublin to a certain effect use that very, very well. So I mean, there definitely is positives there.
Yeah, and it's not an aging team, the one we have at the moment. Obviously Carl Craig stepped away there a few weeks ago and retired, but other than that, there's I think maybe 2 or 3 in their early 30s, and all the rest, you know, again, the Smiths, Merces, they're kind of just that 27, 28 mark off the top of my head, and he was in and around that category. So it's not an aging team anyways. But I was kind of thinking, actually, before all that under-20, I said our underage is nearly dried up. We had a great spell for maybe 10 or 15 years where we were in Connacht finals the whole time. We got to a few under-21 All-Ireland finals, won the minor, but yeah, they've given a huge boost to the whole county, and it's hopefully now, in years to come, we see maybe 6 or 7 of that under-20 team in the starting team, and drive on and keep what this team has done, maintaining sort of the last 8 for the last 3 or 4 years. I know last year it was gone, but a top 8, top 10 team, just maintaining that and keeping it on for the future.
Yeah, I suppose you forget as well that, like, the age profile is pretty decent with Roscommon footballers. Like, even you're mentioning Enda Smith, like, I nearly felt like he was in his 30s or his early 30s or his mid 30s, because you feel like he's been around for such a long time. So I suppose that is still a positive. Like, Conor Cox is still relatively young as well. A lot of the players, maybe the Dailies as well. Like, so you still have a lot of the players that are still kind of in and around that kind of prime. So there probably is still another, maybe a chance to push for another Connacht, considering the draw as well. And we'll get onto that in a minute. Like, there's definitely a possibility maybe for Roscommon to do 1 or 2, I suppose, you know, big things in 2022.
Yeah, well, a lot of the current team was on that under-21 team that got to the All-Ireland in 2013 against Dublin. You know, the Smiths, the Murtas, 2 Dailies, Sean Malooly, you know, all of them were on that team. So yeah, that's what you have to hope that this under-21 or under-20 team even can do, and sort of carry that through the next few years. But yeah, the team's, I said, young enough, well, in footballing terms anyways, none of them are really close to retiring anyways. So there's definitely a lot still in them, and you know, kind of titles don't come around too often, but you'd have to hope there's definitely maybe one more in this group of players anyways.
And I suppose the defensive approach, you know, last year in that Galway game got a lot of negative criticism, and I know Stephen Poacher was coming out defending it and all the rest, and there was definitely a lot of, I suppose, probably a lot of harsh criticism in some ways. Like, you know, obviously you have to, like, every team has different ways of winning games, but I suppose it probably was a little bit disappointing given the fact that in the final 10 to 15 minutes, Galway were fairly comfortable, really, and Roscommon still probably didn't come out of their shell and start playing. So would you expect maybe more of the same stuff in 2022, or do you think maybe there might, especially with some of the changes in the background for the management, maybe they might be a bit more attacking, a bit more on the front foot in 2022?
Yeah, it is going to be interesting because Poacher got a lot of the blame for that Galway game, even though he wasn't there, and he had COVID for, I think he missed 10 days or something leading up to the game. So whether how much of an impact he had, or did he just leave them to it, I don't know who set up, who's behind the tactics or whatever. But it was a definitely, I mean, there was big criticism definitely in the county after that game, because we'd seen enough poor performances in the league like that. So I don't think we're suited to play that style of play. I can understand to a certain extent, because we're probably not strong enough defensively to maybe go toe-to-toe with the big team. But when you have Conor Cox, Jimmy Mercer, Donny Smiths in your half back line, and they're not them type of players, they just aren't. It's either you leave them on the bench and bring in a more industrious player, or you just say, right, we're going to leave them three up and we're going to try and work off it. But I think there has to be some sort of, definitely more emphasis put on attacking play next year. I mean, surely Anthony Cunningham would have seen the criticism that he got. Now, whether he's stubborn enough to ignore it and say, this is the way I'm going to do it, will be interesting to see. But the fact the whole backroom team has changed kind of suggests maybe a different style of play. You'd have to think there'd be something different next year. Otherwise, why would they? I don't think they would have all just stepped away all coincidentally at once. So I'm expecting some sort of different style of play. And I think you can probably do it in Division 2. Again, probably no disrespect to the likes of Offaly and Clare, but if you're playing them, we can probably go at them more so than we would against a Kerry or a Dublin. So it's definitely probably a decent division if you are going to sort of change the style of play to do it in.
Well, that's the thing, because I think even from watching Roscommon down the years, the times when I've thought that they've looked at their best is definitely when they've been playing on the front foot, like when you won those 2 Connacht titles and the one under Kevin McStay. Although you did probably, and you look back to the Super 8s, and obviously there was a few heavy defeats to Dublin and a few other teams, but that's just one of them things, really. That's just probably just going to happen. You're probably going to get beaten either way, really. And, if you ask probably most Roscommon fans, they'd probably take a Connacht title and, some disappointing defeats in quarterfinals over, I suppose, defensive football and winning nothing. So I suppose you can't have the best of both worlds.
No, I mean, yeah, Kevin McStay did take some criticism for that as well. We played some great football, and I was in some games, and it was brilliant. You had that game against Armagh in the round 4 qualifier, which was an unbelievable game. It was literally attack against attack, and who could score the most, and it was brilliant for the neutral to watch. But then you take the hammerings, against the Mayo replay, Dublin, of course, Tyrone, bet us by 20 in Croke Park. So you got them bad days as well. But that's just probably natural the way you play that. So you're definitely right. I mean, I'd much rather see us play attacking football, and then if you lose, you lose. But if you play, as I said, if you play defensive football, you have to win. You can play attacking football and lose, but you can say, right, that was a great game. It was just end-to-end stuff, and they just got the better of us. You play defensive football and you lose by 5 or 6 points, it kind of feels like you lose by 15 points. It's the same. It's just you're so deflated by the end, and it's boring to watch. You're getting no excitement out of it. So yeah, you just have to think there'll be some sort of style change next year. I'd be shocked if we still played that same. I'm going to say it rubbish. It was rubbish at times last year. Honestly, we were one of the most boring teams to watch in the country, and that's kind of sad to say about your own county.
Yeah, no, it is a fair point, all right. Because even in, I suppose, some of the, I mean, you can understand why they probably approach Division 1 the way, because they're probably saying, well, look, if we go toe to toe with all 3 of these teams, we won't get anything. But I suppose they didn't get anything either way anyways, unfortunately. But how do you reckon is we'll get on then in I suppose in conclusion in Division 2? Do you think it'd be up there fighting for promotion, middle of the pack, or how do you see it playing out?
I'd say we'll be top 3 anyways. As I said, I think all will get up, and I was naming Meath, Cork and Derry then. Derry are an interesting one. I don't know. Obviously, coming from Division 3, it's going to be hard to get straight away Division Division 2 to Division 1 then, but Cork are an unknown. They were fancied last year and probably the year before that, and they didn't really do anything. And Meath, they're probably similar enough team to us, Meath, at the moment. So it'll be tight. I think we'll finish second. I think with just a bit of experience, we've been up and down more than anyone nearly. And we've been consistently in that top 2. So I think you'd have to fancy us definitely for top 3. I think is a minimum, and I think we'll finish second.
I'm looking at that Connacht, the Connacht Championship draw then as well. We were saying you have Mayo and Galway on one side of the draw, and you obviously Roscommon obviously play the winners of Sligo or New York. So, I mean, best possible draw really there for yourselves, because it gives you, I don't want to discredit Sligo or New York, but in many ways it's almost like it's like a warm-up game in some respects. Obviously, you need to treat them with a certain level of respect, but at the same time, you'd feel like surely Roscommon would be good enough to come through that game and then go into a Connacht final. And you've seen in previous years as well, where Mayo and Galway, they have their big game over on the other side of the draw, they get to a final, and then Roscommon sometimes are the ones that usually catch them out in the final. So, you're one game away there, one win away then, and really from there anything can happen.
Yeah, look, I mean, I said earlier, no disrespect to Sligo, but a good Connacht Championship draw is avoiding Mayo or Galway to the final, and we've done that. I think the last 3 years we've had to play them. I know we did it in 2019. We bet them both away, but it's very hard to beat, say, Mayo and then Galway in the final. To take out 2 of them is very difficult. So in a one-off game, you again look like it would be underdogs no matter who we come up against. But one-off game, again, we've proven that we can beat them. But in terms of draw, yeah, it's probably as good as you could hope for. Although in 2015, I think we just won Division 2 and Sligo bet us in Markievicz Park. Now I think Sligo were better then, and I think we're better now. So, but it just shows. I mean, Sligo Sligo, they've just gone back a lot. I'm assuming they'll beat New York, but to be honest, I don't even know that game go ahead. Will they even travel to New York? I can see that being just cancelled and it being a straight Sligo Roscommon semi-final. But yeah, look, you'd have to fancy your chance against Sligo. It's a great opportunity to get to a kind of final, and then who knows? It'll be in Castlebar or Salt Hill again, the final. Hopefully Salt Hill, if we won the last 2 there. It seems to be a decent ground for us to go to. Again, you'd rather probably play Galway at this moment in time than Mayo. But look, in terms of draws, yeah, you probably couldn't have asked for much better.
How do you see Mayo and Galway playing out then? I mean, in some ways, it's probably a great time for Galway to play Mayo. I know obviously both sides will be coming off the back of National League campaigns, and maybe there might be injuries by then, or who knows how the situation will be. But like the general consensus is anyway, it's a good time for Galway to play Mayo, because usually when they've beaten Mayo in these Connacht Championship games, it's been in the early rounds when Mayo are probably coming into the Connacht Championship, maybe not as fresh as what we would see from them later on in the Championship. So how could you see that game going?
Yeah, you're definitely right, because I think Galway, I think they bet Mayo 3 or 4 years in a row, leading up to the Connacht final. So there's maybe you could say the pressure's on Mayo, but there's definitely pressure on Galway as well after the last couple of years with Porrick Joyce. I think there has to be a big year in Galway this year. But I'd have to fancy Mayo. If at this moment in time you'd have to fancy Mayo. I don't know, is it in Castlebar? I think it could be in Castlebar.
I think so.
I'm not 100%.
I think McHale Park's under construction or something, isn't there, or something? So it might be.
Yeah. I think Mayo will have home advantage anyways. You'd have to fancy Mayo. But look, as we keep saying, Galway always have the players to cause anyone problems on a given day, but they just don't show it enough. So pressure on both, definitely. But I'd probably edge with Mayo anyways. I think about 3 or 4 at this moment in time. Look, it's a long way to go. I said league campaigns, we don't know what's going to happen, who injuries you might pick up. So But if you're picking a team right now to again, no disrespect to Leitrim because they have to play them or London afterwards, but the winner of that gets the final, and I think it'll probably be Mayo.
Yeah, and I suppose even if you were, like, let's say, to get beaten in that kind of final, like, at least you do have qualifiers as well, so you're probably, maybe one win away then from an All-Ireland quarter-final. There's no Super 8s this year, which is probably better, I think, in most people's eyes, because it gives you a one-off game to get to a semi-finals rather than having to play through 3 games in a group stage when a lot of them are probably going to be meaningless. So I suppose, yeah, with qualifiers back in there, hopefully, anyway, at this moment of the recording, anyway, qualifiers are going to be in there. You never quite know with the GAA and the world landscape what's going to happen between now and then, but I'd imagine that's a positive as well. Like, at least it's not like last year or the year before, if you get knocked out in Connacht, you're going to have that, I suppose, next chance or that next opportunity to progress on into the next phase of the All-Ireland series.
Yeah, no, at this current moment in time anyways, that the current structure for next year definitely suits us better anyways. A qualifier, and if we were lucky enough to get into the last day, it's a knockout, because let's be honest, the Super 8s, it suits the stronger more so than the weaker counties that get there. It's definitely, because again, you could catch out a Kerry or a Dublin or a Mayo once in your group and you get 2 points. You have to play the next 2 games and you can lose them both, so definitely a one-off game suits a Roscommon far better than I say Dublin and Kerry probably prefer the Super 8s, more competitive games for them going into the semi-final. Probably test out maybe a few players in that last game if they wrapped up the business in the first 2 games. But at this moment of time, anyways, that structure would definitely suit us. So hopefully we can get a good crack at it and a good year. It has the makings of a good year. Division 2. Decent Connacht Championship Draw, and then possibly, you're a game or away from the last day. So it definitely has the makings of a good year next year. So it's whether or not we can take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I suppose, like, looking at the overall big picture of the All-Ireland series, as we were saying there, I mean, it's a long time away, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of things that will happen in between and whatnot. But who would you have as the front runners for the All-Ireland at this moment in time? This is probably one of the first years really in a long time where you're going into it and thinking there could be any one of 3 or 4 teams that could win it. And I suppose with Tyrone winning the All-Ireland last year, we've seen that it is possible really for some teams to go on a bit of a run, to build a bit of momentum and go all the way and win it. So who would you see as the front runners or favourites at this moment in time?
It's definitely more open yet than before. I'm still going to go Dublin again. I think they'll definitely, not a point to prove, but it'll just give them that extra bit of motivation next year. That's almost after that Mayo game, they'd lost 1 game in about 6 or 7 years, and suddenly people were thinking they were finished or something. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Like, they were going to lose at some stage, they lost after extra time to Mayo. I think it probably just Mayo the comeback and that, and Dublin just looked lost for energy, and just Mayo they looked the younger team that night anyways. But yes, I still have to fancy Dublin because they're in Leinster. They're going to walk that probably again straight into a last days, and they know it so well. And again, there's a few, obviously. I think Philly's gone. I'm trying to think who else went. Was there another retirement?
There was another one, yeah, but it's evaded my memory at the minute. But yeah, I don't think any of the retirements, from what I remember anyway, were any of real. Yeah. So, or Kevin McManaman actually was the other one. He was the other big. He was the other big retirement. But I don't think any of them were going to start or play anyways. To be honest.
No, I'm trying to think of the age profile. Like, James McCarthy is probably the oldest starter. Is he? The likes maybe Johnny Cooper. I don't know what age he is, but the likes of Fentoning, Kieran Kilkenny, I think they're probably still 28-ish, probably mid to late 20. Yeah, so like they're not really going anywhere in terms of the age profile anyways. So I have to fancy Dublin again. Kerry, the pressure is always on there, and Jack O'Connor coming back, it'll even, well, not the pressure, but the scrutiny will be even increased on them now. And so, the Kerry are just crying for an All-Ireland at this stage, but it'll probably come at some stage. I think that the likes of Clifford and Shawnee O'Shea, I cannot see them not winning an All-Ireland by the end of their career at some stage. That they're still that young. They probably have about 10 or 11 attempts at it. So I'd imagine they'll win one. Mayo, of course, I think, will Mayo get many better chances than they did last year with Dublin and Kerry out of the equation in that final. I actually did think they were going to finally win it last year, but just don't seem to have it when it comes to the final. It was the tamest I've seen Mayo in an All-Ireland final as well. The way they lost that, I think the result was never in doubt with maybe 15, 20 minutes to go in that game, which was a disappointment from Mayo point of view. And obviously in Ulster, I think I can only see Tyrone. I don't think Donegal are good enough anymore. Or they still have youngish players, but again, Donegal are a bit like Mayo when it comes to certain games. They just don't deliver in them latter stages. So I can't see them winning, or Monaghan or Armagh. I think they're more last 8 teams. So I think it's one out of each province. I think Tyrone, Mayo, Kerry, and Dublin, and I'd have to go with Dublin again.
Yeah, well, hopefully you're right anyways. But I know I was listening to Brian Fenton actually on Off the Ball there, I remember a couple of weeks ago, and he gave a great interview, and he was speaking about how it would hopefully reinvigorate the city and get people more behind Dublin. And I even know plenty of friends and family, and even sometimes when you get chatting to people and they do say, it's one of them things that people don't want to admit, but it probably did get a bit boring after a while. The sixth All-Ireland was probably just like it was just like another win, really. There was no real massive meaning to it. So maybe this year there might be more motivation, more meaning to it. But I suppose we'll have to see what happens, obviously, between now and then. Is there any surprise packages even in there, you think, even like from lower down the divisions, or, even in the whole overall spectrum of the All-Ireland Championship, you think that could maybe pull off a shock or two or a surprise or two? Maybe it even might be Roscommon, who knows?
Yeah, I'd like to say it'd be Roscommon, but I don't know. I think Derry could be in Ulster. They could get. I can't remember. Are they playing Tyrone?
I think they are. Yeah. I think they played a winner of. I think Fermanagh and Tyrone are in the preliminary round. I think, and then they played a winner. I think.
Yeah, so that's not an ideal draw, but again, they could trouble Tyrone in an Ulster game at that stage of the season as well. Definitely, I like what Derry have done. They were unlucky. They probably should have beaten Donegal last year. Let's be honest. So I would have actually said Derry if they weren't playing Tyrone. I did say last year actually for the league, I did say Tyrone. I did predict Tyrone to win the league and have a good year, but I didn't tip them for the All-Ireland, unfortunately. But I was kind of half claiming that I saw Tyrone coming. Just trying to think who else is there. Possibly. I mean, you always think of Meath or Kildare could have a decent run. One of them should be in the Leinster final, so you'd have to think, again, they'll fancy their chance again till last days. Ulster said outside of Derry, I don't see anything from the usual suspects. You have Galway and Roscommon and Connacht. Cork. Yeah, I would have said Derry if it wasn't for that draw. I'm trying to think. I don't think there'd be too many major shocks in the championship with runs. As I said, Derry potentially if they got a run at a qualifier maybe or something, but outside of that I don't see too many.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. I think that's why it's probably really important that there is qualifiers in 2021, because you've seen in previous years, I think the provincial championships, a lot of them nearly pick themselves. Like you could probably nearly put your house on both Kerry and Dublin coming through their provincial championships at this moment in time. And Connacht, you'd say it's either going to be Mayo, Galway or Roscommon, and then Ulster. Ulster is probably a lot more open maybe, but generally speaking, it's very easy to predict a lot of the provincial championships, but I suppose it is that qualifiers maybe where teams might be able to go on a bit of a run.
Yeah, no, definitely. The qualifiers will definitely give more incentive to teams this year. Because last year, I mean, for some teams, if they drew with Dublin or, Sligo and Leitrim play Mayo, you're just thinking, what's the point? What's the point of that? So at least next year, with the Towson Cup coming in and the qualifiers, it should give teams more of an incentive that if the first game goes wrong, at least they can have a run at it, if you like. So yes, again, hopefully we'll have a better championship, because it was disappointing to see the proposal go through that time. Because the players want change. It's clear to see, especially in them lower counties, getting 2 games in the month of June and July, it just isn't good enough really anymore. Like you want them to play, but you're like, they're probably saying, what's the point of me training 7-8 months only to get 1 or 2 games in the summer? Like, so I think that boiled me blood when that proposal will be, the players just completely ignored by people above them. It's disappointing to see the likes of, I think, Galway and Mayo voted no, and all the Ulster counties. So they'll have to come back with some sort of proposal again, because I think change has to happen at some stage. And it has to happen quick enough. You don't want this current group of players to miss out on a different championship that comes in maybe in 7-8 years' time. You want it to happen soon enough, and to even try it, give it a trial period like the Super 8 and see how it works, and then you can tweak it or change again if you want. So, but yeah, next year's championship looks better on paper, anyways.
Yeah, well, I suppose that's the thing, like, as you're seeing a lot of different players opting out, and I think Red Oak Murphy opted out of Sligo, and you're seeing a whole host of different players from the lower divisions, like players retiring, and even Antrim have got a whole host of players who have opted out from the side who came through Division 4 last year. So I suppose it is one of them things as well, where the provincial councils probably have too much of a pull, like on provincial tournaments, and you're even seeing the pre-season tournaments coming back in and all the rest, which is probably a good thing, to be fair, for next year anyway. So it gives a lot more game time to players. But I suppose at the same time, like, they were saying they were going to run pre-season or they were saying they were going to run the provincial tournaments as pre-season tournaments. Maybe there just needs to be more meaning for those provincial tournaments, because I'm sure even from your own point of view as well, like if you were to win a Connacht Championship and then I think it was finished 6th or 7th in Division 2, you'd essentially have nothing to show for it. So I suppose maybe that's the main thing, is just making sure the provincial tournaments do count for something anyways, regardless of when they're played.
Yeah. No, I mean, when it came to that vote, the bigger counties looked after themselves. I mean, one of the arguments, I think, for the Mayo side was that sixth in Division 1 didn't get through. But I mean, I think Niall Morgan was talking about it. They said if you finish 6th in Division 1 and you play 7 games, that means you probably lost 3 or 4. Do you really deserve to go through after losing 3 or 4 championship games? No, you don't. So they were just looking after themselves. Probably the same like Kerry as well, just asking for another spot to be given to the Division 1 team. And then actually another thing was the Ulster. Yeah, it was the Ulster Council kind of pushing the no vote as well. I think it was Down? I think was the only county to vote yes. And Colin Parkinson had the Ulster chairman on, and he was saying that there'd be only 3,000 or 4,000 at a Tyrone Armagh League Championship game. I mean, that's ridiculous stuff to think. I mean, that'd be packed out, a Tyrone Armagh League Championship game. It could be battling to get through. I think just has to be a complete change in mentality and openness to change this championship, because it's been boring for too long. You get a few good semi-finals and a final hopefully at the end of the year, and people think, oh yeah, it was a great championship. But I tell you, when Mayo hammer a Leitrim or something, we're all having the same discussions again. So I think it has to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, because you could see a scenario again next year where we end up having that same conversation, like in terms of Mayo, hammering out addition to, I suppose, Leitrim maybe in a semi-final, and then I think Dublin might end up playing Wexford again, fully enough. So maybe you could end up seeing a similar situation there as well. Like, and I think in the club championships you're seeing the perfect solution, really, like in terms of your senior, your intermediate, your junior, and you're seeing with the club championship games, I know maybe with the fact that conditions maybe play a part, and they're only 60-minute games, so maybe that's why they're a lot closer a lot of the time. But a lot of those games are fiercely competitive. Like you've seen Mountbelly, Moyloch nearly got beat by Ballinamore, Sean O'Heslands of Leitrim, and then, as you were saying earlier, Turtle Strand nearly turned over Knockmore. So like there definitely is a lot of solutions there anyways. It's just, it's whether it's this year, next year, or in 5 or 10 years time, whenever it is, when they finally find the fix.
Yeah, no, definitely the club seems to work good. You see in the ladies championship as well, the senior, intermediate, junior. You earned the right to get in. And you saw with the Meath ladies, they won the intermediate. They were good enough to get into senior, and then they pulled off probably the greatest shock in an All Ireland you'll probably see by beating Dublin. So it seems to work in the ladies all right. Again, it's just whether people want it in the men's. I think we're just too stubborn to have change. The provincials will always have to be there because they're precious over them. So yeah, there just has to be that openness and willingness to actually listen to ideas. I think with the proposal B, it just seemed like there was some people that just didn't want to listen to any argument for it at all. They had all the negatives. They didn't want to hear the positives for it. So I think there has to be, I said, the willingness to listen to ideas, to shout them out, to get them on the table, and then come to a solution to, I wouldn't not save football because it's in a good position, but just to give a bit of life. I mean, the hurling did it with the round robin for the Munster and Leinster Championships, and it gave it new life 3 or 4 years ago, whenever that came in, and everyone was raving about the hurling. So if we can have that with the football when it comes in, you can just imagine the crowds should be up. Look, it's badly needed, and especially for them smaller counties, to give them hope and to work their way through the divisions, and one day maybe play in the top 16 against the top teams.
100%, yeah. Like I remember watching I think it was one of the interviews of one of the people who was in charge of the Leinster Council on Off the Ball, and it was probably one of the more bizarre interviews I've ever seen. Like it's definitely well needed. Definitely change is definitely needed at some point. But I suppose we could go on and talk about this probably, for the next few hours. But realistically, we'll see obviously what changes over the next couple of years or so. I suppose before we finish up, where can people find your own podcast, The Sideline View, if anyone's looking to, I suppose, subscribe to your own channel or follow your own podcasts?
Yeah, if you just search it on YouTube, the Sideline View with Darragh O'Connor, or on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you should find me there.
Perfect. Yeah, well, I'll link it down below anyway. And cheers, Darragh, for coming on. I appreciate it.
No bother, Aaron.